"Mom, we're not coming for Thanksgiving after all." Those were the 7 words that changed the way I looked at my family. Ryan said them so casually that at first I thought I had misheard him. I stood in my kitchen holding a wooden spoon, staring at the turkey slowly roasting in the oven. The aroma of sage, butter, and rosemary filled the house. 3 pumpkin pies cooled on the counter. The dining table was already set with my best china, the same set my late husband and I had saved for special occasions. For a few seconds, I said nothing. "Is everything okay?" I finally asked. Ryan hesitated. "Yeah, something came up. We'll have to do it another time." Before I could ask another question, the call ended. I lowered the phone and listened to the silence. It felt strange, heavy, the kind of silence that settles into a room and refuses to leave. I told myself not to overreact. Families get busy. Plans change. Life happens. At least that was what I wanted to believe. I spent the next hour finishing dinner anyway. I mashed the potatoes. I stirred the gravy. I arranged the dinner rolls in a basket lined with a white cloth napkin. Every few minutes I glanced toward the driveway, half expecting to see Ryan's SUV pull in despite what he had said. It never did. By 6 o'clock, the candles were lit. By 7, they had already burned halfway down. I sat alone at a table meant for 8 people. Across from me sat an empty chair where my husband used to laugh at his own terrible jokes. He had been gone for 4 years, yet some days I still expected to hear his footsteps. Thanksgiving had always been his favorite holiday. He used to say it wasn't about food. It was about showing people they mattered. I looked around the room and wondered if I still mattered to anyone. I ate a few bites of turkey and pushed the plate away. The food tasted fine. I just couldn't enjoy it. Around 8 o'clock, my phone buzzed. For a moment, I thought Ryan might be calling to apologize. Instead, it was a message from my friend Carol. There was no text, just a photo. I tapped it open. My stomach tightened instantly. Ryan was smiling. Vanessa was smiling. My 2 grandchildren were smiling. Behind them stood a massive stone fireplace decorated with autumn wreaths. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. Everyone looked relaxed and happy. They weren't at home dealing with an emergency. They weren't overwhelmed by unexpected plans. They were attending a luxury Thanksgiving event at a resort nearly 200 miles away. I zoomed in on the picture. There was more. Several members of Vanessa's family stood beside them. Everyone had been invited. Everyone except me. I stared at the image for a long time. Then I noticed the caption, "Perfect Thanksgiving with the people who matter most." My hands became very still. Not because I was angry, not because I wanted revenge, because suddenly, pieces from the last few years began fitting together. Missed birthdays, last-minute cancellations, family vacations I learned about afterward, conversations that ended when I entered the room, small moments I had dismissed, small hurts I had excused. Sitting alone at that table, I realized Thanksgiving hadn't been canceled at all. I had been canceled, and as I looked at that photograph glowing on my screen, I felt something inside me shift. Quietly, permanently, because for the first time, I stopped asking why they treated me this way. Instead, I started asking a different question. What exactly did my son think he would gain by pretending I no longer existed? The next morning, I woke before sunrise. That was nothing unusual. At 72, sleep came in shorter stretches than it once had. I made a pot of coffee and stood by the kitchen window watching the first lights settle over the neighborhood. The houses across the street looked peaceful, ordinary, as though nothing had changed. Yet everything felt different to me. The photograph from the night before remained open on my phone. I had looked at it more times than I wanted to admit. Not because I enjoyed torturing myself, but because every time I studied it, I noticed something new. Ryan looked comfortable, relaxed, not like a man who had canceled family plans because of some unexpected problem. Vanessa looked especially pleased with herself. Even the children seemed excited. Nobody in that picture appeared disappointed that I was missing. Nobody appeared to notice the empty space where I should have been. I poured my coffee and sat at the same dining table that had felt so crowded with memories the night before. The leftovers were neatly packed away. The candles had burned down to small pools of wax. Looking at them, I found myself thinking about previous years. At first, the memories came slowly. Then they arrived all at once. 3 years earlier, Ryan had promised to visit for my birthday. I had baked his favorite chocolate cake. An hour before dinner, he called to cancel. Vanessa had apparently made other plans. 2 years earlier, they skipped Christmas morning because they wanted a quieter celebration at home. Last year, They spent Easter with her family because it was supposedly more convenient. Each explanation had sounded reasonable on its own. That was the trick. None of them seemed important enough to question. Not individually, but sitting there that morning, I could finally see the pattern. The distance had not appeared overnight. It had been growing one small decision at a time. One canceled visit, one forgotten phone call, one missed opportunity after another. I thought about my late husband, Richard. He used to notice things I overlooked. He would have recognized the pattern much sooner. Richard believed that relationships survived through effort, not grand gestures, not expensive gifts, just consistent effort. Showing up, calling back, remembering important dates. I remembered something he once told Ryan when he was a teenager. We had been eating dinner together when Ryan complained about having to help an elderly neighbor carry groceries inside. Richard had looked at him and said, "Character is revealed by what you do when there is nothing to gain." At the time, Ryan seemed embarrassed. He apologized and helped the neighbor every week afterward. Back then, I thought the lesson had stayed with him. Now I was not so sure. Around mid-morning, my phone rang. It was Carol. She did not waste time pretending everything was normal. She asked how I was holding up. I told her I was fine. She remained silent for several seconds. The kind of silence only a close friend can use. Finally, she said, "Evelyn, I think you have spent years making excuses for people who stopped making time for you." Her words settled heavily in my mind after the call ended. Because deep down, I knew she was right. For years, I had been protecting Ryan from consequences he never even knew existed. And for the first time, I began wondering what would happen if I stopped. The following week moved quietly, but my mind did not. Carol's words stayed with me everywhere I went. I heard them while folding laundry. I heard them while watering the roses Richard had planted years ago. Most of all, I heard them during the long evenings when the house became still and memories grew louder. One afternoon, I found myself opening an old photo album I had not touched in years. Ryan smiled from nearly every page. There he was at 8 years old holding a fishing rod beside his father. There he was at his high school graduation. There he was standing in our driveway on the day he left for college, trying very hard to look confident. I remembered every sacrifice behind those photographs. Richard and I had postponed vacations. We had worked extra hours. We had saved carefully so our son could start his adult life without the burdens we carried when we were young. Looking at those pictures, I could not understand where the distance had begun. Then I noticed something unexpected. The more recent photos became, the fewer of them included me. Family gatherings still happened. Vacations still happened. Celebrations still happened. I simply appeared less and less often. It was such a subtle change that I had never truly noticed it before. That evening, I received another glimpse into a world I apparently no longer belonged to. My granddaughter Emma posted several pictures online from the resort trip. I smiled when I saw her happy face. None of this was her fault. Children simply follow the adults around them. But one picture caught my attention. In the background stood Ryan and Vanessa speaking with another couple. I could not hear their conversation, of course. Yet something about the image bothered me. Ryan looked distracted. Vanessa appeared to be doing all the talking. I enlarged the photo and stared at it for several moments before setting my phone down. It reminded me of countless family dinners over the years. Whenever I asked Ryan a question, Vanessa often answered first. Whenever plans were discussed, Vanessa usually made the final decision. At the time, I convinced myself that every marriage develops its own rhythm. Now I wondered whether I had ignored something more significant. 2 days later, I drove across town for a routine appointment. While waiting in the lobby, I unexpectedly ran into Thomas Bennett, the attorney who had handled Richard's estate after his passing. We exchanged greetings and spoke for several minutes. Before leaving, he asked how Ryan was doing. The question seemed innocent enough, yet I hesitated. For the first time, I did not automatically say everything was wonderful. Thomas noticed. Attorneys spend their careers reading people. He tilted his head slightly and said, "If you ever need anything, Evelyn, do not hesitate to call." It was a simple statement, nothing more. Yet after he walked away, I found myself thinking about it for the rest of the day. That night, I sat alone in my living room watching the fire glow softly in the fireplace. Outside, a cold wind moved through the trees. Inside, I replayed the last several years in my mind. The excuses, the cancellations, the growing distance. Somewhere along the way, I had stopped expecting consideration and started feeling grateful for scraps of attention. The realization unsettled me, because once I saw it clearly, I could not unsee it. And for the first time, a thought entered my mind that would soon change everything. Perhaps the real question was not why Ryan had drifted away. Perhaps the real question was what he expected would happen if he kept taking me for granted. A few days after my conversation with Thomas, I found myself looking through old files in the study Richard once used as his home office. I had not gone through those cabinets in years. Most of the documents were ordinary: tax records, insurance papers, property information, the kind of paperwork every family accumulates over a lifetime. Yet the quiet process of sorting through them brought back memories I had not visited in a long time. Richard had always been organized. Every folder had a label. Every important document had a place. He believed preparation was one of the greatest gifts a person could leave behind. As I sat there, I remembered the many evenings we spent discussing our future, not because we were wealthy beyond imagination, but because we had worked hard for everything we owned: the house, the investments, the savings. None of it appeared overnight. It represented decades of discipline and sacrifice. I eventually came across a folder containing notes from meetings we had attended years earlier regarding estate planning. Seeing Richard's handwriting made me pause. His notes were neat and deliberate. One sentence caught my attention immediately: assets should support those who value family, responsibility, and integrity. I read the line twice, then a third time. The words stayed with me long after I closed the folder. Later that afternoon, Ryan called unexpectedly. His voice sounded cheerful, almost unusually cheerful. He asked how I was doing. He asked whether I needed anything from the grocery store. He even asked about the roses in my backyard. The conversation felt strange, not because he was being rude. Quite the opposite. The sudden interest felt unfamiliar. During the previous year, most of our conversations had lasted only a few minutes. Now he seemed eager to keep talking. When the call ended, I sat quietly for several moments. Something about it did not feel natural. The following day, I received another call. This time it was Vanessa. She rarely contacted me directly, yet suddenly she wanted to know how I was feeling after the holiday. She mentioned family gatherings, future plans, the importance of staying connected. Her words sounded pleasant enough, but beneath them I sensed something else: a carefulness, as though every sentence had been chosen for a reason. After hanging up, I walked through the house thinking about both conversations. For years, I had chased after their attention. I had adjusted my expectations, lowered my standards, accepted excuses. Now, almost overnight, the attention had returned. The timing troubled me, not because I disliked hearing from my family. Any mother enjoys hearing from her child, but genuine affection has a rhythm to it. It arrives consistently. It does not appear suddenly after long periods of distance. That evening, I met Carol for coffee. We sat near the window while winter sunlight faded across the parking lot. I told her about the recent phone calls. She listened carefully without interrupting. Finally, she stirred her coffee and looked directly at me. "Have you ever considered that people pay attention to what they think they might lose?" she asked. The question lingered between us. I did not answer immediately. Deep down, I already knew why her words unsettled me. Because for the first time, I was beginning to suspect that someone had started paying very close attention to things I had not yet decided to give away. The following week brought an unexpected invitation. Thomas called and asked whether I had time to stop by his office. His tone was professional, but there was a seriousness beneath it that immediately caught my attention. I agreed to meet him the next afternoon. On the drive there, I told myself it was probably routine business. Yet I could not shake the feeling that something important was waiting for me. Thomas welcomed me into his office and offered me a seat near the window. For several minutes we discussed ordinary matters: the house, my retirement accounts, general estate planning updates. Then he folded his hands on the desk and looked at me carefully. "Evelyn," he said, "I have known your family for many years. I want to ask a simple question. Have your intentions regarding your estate changed at all since Richard passed away?" The question lingered in the room. I found myself thinking about the previous months. The cancellations, the distance, the sudden return of attention. "I am not sure," I admitted honestly. Thomas nodded. "That is a reasonable answer. But uncertainty is usually a sign that something deserves closer examination." He opened a folder and reviewed several documents. Seeing the numbers in front of me felt strangely unreal. The house, the investments, the savings Richard and I had, built over decades. Together, they represented approximately $1.5 million in assets. For years, I had rarely thought about the amount itself. To me, it was simply the result of a lifetime of work. Yet sitting there that afternoon, I realized that other people might see those numbers differently. Thomas closed the folder. "You do not need to make any decisions today," he said. "I simply want you to remember that your estate plan should reflect your values, not your assumptions." On the drive home, his words stayed with me. Values, not assumptions. For years I had assumed Ryan would naturally inherit most of what Richard and I built. Not because he was entitled to it, but because he was our son. I had never really questioned the arrangement. That evening, my phone rang. It was Ryan again. He sounded unusually enthusiastic. He asked whether I wanted to join him and Vanessa for dinner the following weekend. The invitation surprised me. We had not shared a dinner together in months. As we talked, another detail caught my attention. He repeatedly asked whether I had everything organized around the house, whether I needed help with paperwork, whether I had spoken to any financial advisors recently. Individually, the questions seemed harmless. Together, they felt oddly specific. After the call ended, I sat quietly in my living room. Outside, the first snowflakes of the season drifted through the air. Inside, I replayed every word of the conversation. For the first time, I stopped focusing on what Ryan said. Instead, I focused on what he never asked. He never asked how lonely I felt during the holiday. He never mentioned the photograph from the resort. He never apologized for excluding me. Somehow we had skipped over all of that, as though none of it mattered. The realization settled heavily on my heart, because I was beginning to understand something difficult. Ryan seemed interested in maintaining a relationship, but I was no longer certain he was interested in repairing one. And somewhere deep inside, a quiet decision was beginning to form. Before I could decide what to do next, however, another conversation would reveal far more than either Ryan or Vanessa ever intended. 2 days later, I decided to stop guessing and start paying attention. I did not confront Ryan. I did not accuse Vanessa. Instead, I conducted a small test, the kind Richard would have appreciated. That morning, I called Ryan and told him I had just returned from a medical appointment. Technically, it was true. I had gone in for a routine checkup, but I allowed my voice to sound more tired than usual. "The doctor wants to keep an eye on a few things," I said. There was a brief pause. "Oh," Ryan replied. "What kind of things?" I noticed something immediately. His tone carried concern, but not much curiosity. He did not ask detailed questions. He did not ask whether I needed help. He did not ask if I was frightened. The conversation drifted toward other topics within minutes. Then he had to go. I wished him a good day and hung up. That evening, however, Vanessa called. Her voice was warm, almost overly warm. She asked how I was feeling. She asked whether I had received good care. Then, gradually, the conversation shifted. "Have you thought about simplifying things?" she asked casually. "What do you mean?" I replied, organizing paperwork, making everything easier in the future." I stared out the living room window while she spoke. Snow covered the lawn in a thin white layer. The neighborhood looked peaceful. Her questions did not. "What kind of paperwork?" I asked. "Just general planning," she said quickly. "Things like financial records, property information, important documents." There it was. The same territory Ryan had wandered into during our recent conversations. Not directly, not openly, but often enough to become impossible to ignore. After we ended the call, I sat quietly for nearly an hour. I was not angry. In some ways, anger would have been easier. What I felt instead was disappointment. Deep disappointment, because I realized something important. When I hinted at health concerns, Ryan's attention barely changed. When the subject of future planning appeared, interest suddenly increased. The contrast spoke louder than any argument ever could. The next morning, I called Thomas and asked whether he had time for lunch. We met at a small restaurant near his office. During the meal, I described the recent conversations as objectively as possible. Thomas listened carefully. He never rushed to conclusions. That was one of the reasons I trusted him. When I finished, he set down his coffee cup. "Evelyn," he said gently, "sometimes people reveal their priorities without realizing they are doing it." I nodded, because that was exactly what troubled me. Nobody had demanded anything. Nobody had threatened me. Nobody had even behaved openly badly. Yet beneath the surface, I could feel the shape of something uncomfortable taking form. For years, I had assumed my role in the family was secure because of love. Now I found myself wondering whether some people viewed me through a different lens entirely, as a responsibility, as an obligation, or perhaps as a future opportunity. Driving home, I made a decision. Not a dramatic decision, not a final decision, just a quiet one. I would stop making assumptions. From that moment forward, I would pay attention only to actions. And before long, those actions would provide an answer far clearer than any words ever could. Over the next several days, I kept my promise to myself. I watched actions instead of listening to promises. The results were surprisingly clear. Ryan called twice that week. Both conversations followed a familiar pattern. He asked polite questions. He sounded friendly. Yet every discussion eventually drifted toward practical matters. The house, my finances, whether I had considered downsizing, whether managing such a large property alone had become difficult. None of the questions were inappropriate on their own. What struck me was how consistently they appeared. Not once did he mention the hurtful holiday. Not once did he acknowledge the distance that had grown between us. It was as though we were discussing the future of my belongings while pretending the present state of our relationship did not exist. Meanwhile, Vanessa became even more attentive. She sent cheerful messages, shared photographs of the children, suggested family dinners. On the surface, it looked like a wonderful improvement. A mother might have been tempted to celebrate, but something felt different now. Once you begin seeing a pattern, it becomes difficult to ignore it. One Saturday afternoon, Ryan and Vanessa stopped by unexpectedly. They arrived carrying a bakery box and a bouquet of flowers. The visit lasted nearly 2 hours. During that time, I noticed something that would have escaped my attention in the past. Every conversation about family felt brief. Every conversation about future planning lasted much longer. At one point, Ryan casually asked whether I still met with Thomas regularly. I smiled and said we occasionally spoke when necessary. He nodded and quickly changed the subject. The question seemed innocent enough. Yet I noticed Vanessa glance toward him immediately afterward. A small glance, barely noticeable, but it was there. After they left, I stood at the front window watching their vehicle disappear down the street. The house became quiet again. I looked at the flowers sitting on the kitchen counter. They were beautiful. I appreciated the gesture. Yet I could not stop thinking about something Carol once told me. Genuine care makes you feel seen. Strategic attention makes you feel evaluated. The difference is subtle until you experience both. That evening, I opened the old estate planning folder once more. Richard's handwriting greeted me from the yellowed pages. I found the sentence that had stayed in my mind for weeks. Assets should support those who value family, responsibility, and integrity. I sat there for a long time reading those words. Richard had never believed inheritance was a reward for biology alone. He believed it reflected character, contribution, values. The more I thought about it, the more certain I became that I needed clarity. Not assumptions, not hopes, clarity. The following Monday, I called Thomas and scheduled a private meeting. I did not tell Ryan. I did not tell Vanessa. This conversation belonged to me. When I arrived at Thomas's office, he welcomed me inside and closed the door. Before I could even sit down, he noticed something different in my expression. "You have made a decision, have you not?" he asked gently. I settled into the chair and folded my hands in my lap. For the first time in months, I felt calm. Not angry, not emotional, simply clear. I looked directly at him and answered with complete honesty. I believe I finally understand who has been investing in me as a person and who has been investing in my future assets. Now I need to decide what that understanding should change. Thomas listened without interrupting as I explained everything. The canceled family gatherings, the sudden increase in attention, the conversations that seemed to circle endlessly around property, finances, and future planning. When I finished, he remained quiet for a moment. Then he opened a notebook and asked a question that surprised me. If nothing changed financially, who would still be present in your life? I did not answer immediately. The question was simple, yet it cut through months of confusion. I thought about Carol. I thought about my neighbors who checked on me during snowstorms. I thought about the volunteers at the community center where I occasionally helped organize events. None of those people expected anything from me. They showed up because they cared. The realization brought an unexpected sense of peace. Thomas nodded when I finally answered. "That is often where clarity begins," he said. During the next hour, we reviewed every detail of my estate plan. For the first time since Richard passed away, I looked at it objectively rather than emotionally. I considered what mattered most to me: education, responsibility, kindness, family values that were demonstrated through actions rather than claimed through words. By the end of the meeting, I made a decision, not out of anger, not as punishment, simply as a reflection of what I had learned. Significant changes were made. Portions of the estate would support educational opportunities for my grandchildren through protected arrangements. Other portions would go toward causes Richard and I had supported for years. The structure was thoughtful, deliberate, and consistent with our values. When the documents were finalized, I felt lighter than I had in months. I had not taken something away from anyone. I had simply chosen where our life's work would have the greatest impact. The weeks that followed were interesting. Ryan became more attentive than ever. He stopped by with coffee. He offered to help with projects around the house. Vanessa sent frequent messages asking how I was doing. They invited me to dinners, holiday events, and weekend outings. Years earlier, I would have been thrilled by the attention. Now I observed quietly. The timing remained impossible to ignore. One afternoon, Ryan sat across from me in the kitchen while I prepared lunch. "You know," he said casually, "you should not have to worry about handling everything alone as you get older." I smiled politely. "I manage quite well." He nodded. "Of course you do. I just mean that family should help with important decisions." The statement sounded reasonable, yet something about it felt rehearsed, almost as though he were following a script. Later that evening, I thought about our conversation while washing dishes. For years, I had desperately wanted more involvement from my son. Now that it had arrived, I found myself asking a different question. Why now? Why not last year? Why not the year before? Why not during those lonely holidays when a simple visit would have meant everything? The answers never came. What came instead was certainty. Not certainty about Ryan's intentions. I could not read his mind, but certainty about my own values. For the first time in a long time, I felt aligned with them. Then, just when I believed the situation had settled into a predictable pattern, Thomas called with news that would bring everything to a final test. Thomas called on a cold Tuesday afternoon. His voice carried the same calm professionalism I had always trusted. "Everything is complete," he said. "I simply wanted to let you know that your updated documents have been finalized and securely filed." I thanked him and ended the call. Then I sat quietly in my living room, looking out at the winter sky. There was no dramatic feeling of victory, no excitement, only peace. For months, I had wrestled with disappointment, confusion, and doubt. Now those feelings had finally settled into clarity. I had acted according to my values. Whatever happened next would happen. A few weeks later, Christmas approached. Ryan and Vanessa suddenly became enthusiastic about hosting family gatherings. Invitations arrived early. Phone calls became frequent. They wanted photographs together. They wanted family dinners. They wanted traditions. Outwardly, everything looked wonderful. Anyone watching from the outside would have seen a close family reconnecting. Yet something inside me had changed. I no longer measured love by invitations. I measured it by consistency, by effort shown over time. One evening, I attended a dinner at Ryan's house. The grandchildren were excited to see me. That alone made the trip worthwhile. During the meal, conversation drifted toward future plans, home improvements, retirement goals, long-term family arrangements. I noticed Ryan watching me several times as these topics came up. Vanessa seemed equally attentive. Neither one asked direct questions. Yet I sensed an expectation hanging quietly in the air. An expectation that nothing had changed. An expectation built on assumptions made years ago. I smiled, enjoyed time with my grandchildren, and said nothing. Sometimes silence reveals more than explanations ever can. As the months passed, their attention remained unusually strong. Birthday flowers arrived. Weekend visits increased. Friendly messages appeared regularly. Part of me appreciated the effort. Another part wondered why such effort had been absent when I needed companionship more than anything else. Eventually, I stopped trying to answer that question. Some questions do not change the future. They only keep us trapped in the past. Spring arrived. The snow disappeared. My roses began blooming again. Life moved forward. One afternoon, Carol joined me on the back patio. We drank iced tea and watched the sunlight settle across the yard. She asked whether I regretted any of my decisions. I thought carefully before answering. "No," I said, because I finally stopped rewarding assumptions and started honoring values. Carol smiled. Richard would probably agree with that. I smiled too, because she was right. Months later, while sorting old photographs, I came across a picture from a Thanksgiving long ago. Richard stood beside me, laughing at something Ryan had said as a teenager. Looking at the image, I realized the lesson this entire experience had taught me. Family is not measured by titles, not by legal relationships, not by future expectations. Family is measured by presence, by respect, by the willingness to show up when there is nothing to gain. I placed the photograph back into the album and closed the cover. Then I looked around my quiet home and felt something I had not felt in a very long time. Contentment. Ryan had made his choices. Vanessa had made hers. I had made mine. And in the end, the most valuable thing I protected was never the money Richard and I spent a lifetime building. It was the dignity we spent a lifetime earning.